Hi Miriam, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for inviting me. What a wonderful studio you have.
Well, I find myself down here and just the time flies by.
How long have you been doing glasswork?
I've been doing glasswork for about 15 years, a number of years in the stained glass field, and then about 8 or 9 years ago I was introduced to fused glass and I was hooked, and that's become my love now.
And you've done different types of glasswork.
Yes, as I said, I did the stained glass for a number of years, and then within the fused glass form, I've done various sorts. I work a lot with powders and with glass, and I make many scenes, and I love to work with each of the different colors and various sizes. I also work with sheet glass, and it depends on what form of glass that I'm doing. If I'm working and making scenes, or if I'm working and making platters or bowls or stand-up art pieces or wall pieces, then I use various forms from the small frit glass, this tiny frit, to larger sheet glass. So this
I
is.
see that you have a lot of supplies here.
Oh yes, fused glass is much like woodworkers. We collect the tools to try many things, and so I have everything from a blowtorch to working with saws to working with just cutting tools that started off with the stained glass, and I use many forms. I mean, I'm a student of glass and I love to learn many different techniques from world artists. We're very lucky that the local glass person here from Stained Glass stuff, he brings in world-class artists, so I'm very lucky to do that. It's not a glass form, the fused glass, in which there is much in the way of formal education these days. Most of that's in blown glass. But we have an amazing assortment of glass artists around the world who are really developing this fused glass to a very high form, art form.
And I noticed that you keep a lot of the work down here. And how long does it take you to complete?
It depends on the complexity of the piece. For instance, if I'm making a landscape scene, I have to make the component parts first. So for instance, if I'm making the tree trunks, I will take what we have, it's called a vitrograph kiln, and I make the long tree trunks, and then I work with a blowtorch to make the fine little twigs and on the glass, and then I work with the powders to create the scenes, the back part of it, and often they are in the kiln for several days. If I'm doing thick pieces that are an inch thick or so, I do each layer each time it's fused in the kiln for about 24 hours, and then they're compiled together and I make a thick piece, and they stay in the kiln for 3 days. So Ottawa Hydro and I are very good friends. I'm not happy when hydro prices go up because they spend a lot of time in the kilns. I have 4 or 5 kilns now, everything from what I call my baby kiln to the mama kiln, and I have what I call my papa kiln here.
Oh, you have a few here as
Yes,
well.
this is a glass
A big
kiln.
one.
This is actually a pottery kiln, which they initially were translating in terms of initial glass was done in pottery kilns, but now we have specialized kilns just for glass. So, and then I have 3 others in the other room that I work with, and various saws and everything from drill presses to make things. So if I make jewelry, for instance, this kind of jewelry, this is how I initially started, and you can see my landscape love there. I work with a particular form of glass called dichroic glass, which was glass initially developed for the space industry, for the astronauts' pieces in front of their hats or whatever, and it has reflects, and it has, if you tilt it, you can see that it has various colors into it. This is beautiful glass, or expensive glass, but I like to incorporate that in some of my pieces, particularly in my jewelry pieces. They really speak to me. So this one, for instance, is one that I've used with dichroic glass. I've made the jewelry, and then I use a little Dremel and I etch out my designs. And so what's underneath is black glass, so I etch out my designs and the black comes through. So this is how I make some of this dichroic jewelry. But I love the sparkle and the reflection in dichroic glass.
And there's more work upstairs. Can we go there?
Absolutely.
Let's go. Here we are. You have a lot of work.
Well, I just did a sampling here of the kinds of work that I do. I love to learn various forms of glass. And I started off with just the flat fused pieces. This is a new piece that I'm doing over here, which is what I call chaos to random. So you can see the progression. I, as a glass artist, started with jewelry, then I moved to platters and bowls, that kind of thing. I've learned many beautiful techniques from some fabulous artists, so I am a student of glass, and I am fortunate enough to learn from all the best of the world. I do other forms of glass. I do cast glass. I mean, I've made
This dress?
this dress, this purse, things that speak to me, and it's another kiln casting. It's another form of glass, but probably my biggest love is landscape. And this is the kind of piece I do over here. It's a layered glass, and this one has particular 3 or 4 layers of glass. I work and make as you would, like the land, the sky, then moving forward. And you can see I work a lot with powders. I also work with pieces of glass. And, you know, I like to light my pieces too, so you can, in this one there's only a white light, but some of the pieces I have colored light. So you can change the scene depending upon your mood. You can make it more red, more blue, more green, and it offers a variety in terms of glass scenery you can see depending upon how you feel. If you're feeling...
And you told me earlier that your father-in-law's art. Can we...
Absolutely.
Can we see it?
My father-in-law was Josh Silbert, and he was a landscape artist. He started off as a cartoonist and then went into glass art. You can see a book was just published about him and his life last year. And we've had some local shows at the Cube and one in Toronto recently. He was a student of Lemoyne Fitzgerald, so one of the latter members of the group of 7. And he's my inspiration. That and my cottage, where I'm surrounded by landscape. And he really opened my eyes to color and light. And these are my, I was drawn to landscape. As you can see in here, I have a number of landscape pieces. And I work with what we call glass frit, which is tiny pieces of glass to work. Some of them are just the glass pieces. Some here are thick, so they're like, that's an inch thick pieces, and I work with layers for each one of those. And then they're compiled together and put back in the kiln for 3 days or so. And there's a cast lady's glove that's there. And I have lots of interest from people about just pieces of work that are glass bowls and platters and so on, which are what I call functional art. And
And these are the pieces that inspired your work.
They certainly are. And he was the man who opened my eyes to saying, look at that rock facer, what do you see? I say a gray rock, and he says, no, it's pink, it's purple, it's green. He has a slightly impressionistic color with a lot of his work, which is something that I would like to move more into, a little bit more of the abstract. I am doing some of that now, but I'd like to work further into developing that as a technique and color story.
And what are you working on right now? What is the project?
Well, the project, I'm just finishing a commission on these, what I call my Bargello designs. And what these are strips, tiny strips of glass. And then I'm making, as an inspiration from Bargello tapestry, I make these. They're functional too. I use them as platters as well. You can put food on them, but then they become functional pieces on the table. But now that summer comes, I become inspired again by nature, and I'll be back working on some more forest scenes.
At the cottage?
Well, I take pictures at the cottage, and I come back here and I work. The glass studio requires so much space that I really can't do it at the cottage. But I sometimes can do component parts when I'm pulling glass pieces for trees and so on, I can do that in small pieces at the cottage.
If you get a commission, usually how long would it take to complete?
It depends on the complexity. It depends on the particular form of glass and the kind of glass, if it's cast glass or whether it's landscape glass. But you know, anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months, depending upon the particular piece.
Do you plan on doing something that you have never done before with glass?
Oh, that's very interesting. There's so much to explore still in the forms that I'm doing. But you know, sometimes I thought, well, maybe I should try some flame beating just for fun. Glass blowing I've tried, but like I say, that's a young person's endeavor. Yeah, no, there are so many forms of glass and so much to explore in the kiln glass, which is it's really come to its own in the last number of years.
Miriam, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming and enjoying this. It's been a pleasure to meet you.